Camera number 217 of 365 is the Nikon F80. Very feature-rich camera from Nikon, but it does require batteries to operate all its functions. So let's go ahead and put a battery in the camera. So it takes two of these CR123 batteries, and we place it in the battery grip. We can close it, and then we turn the camera on with the command dials there, with the shutter button as around the collar, the on-off switch, and then that will activate our liquid crystal display, where we can see a whole list of functions regarding our focus area and our exposure. And looking through the viewfinder, you get a full set of information regarding apertures, whether the shutter and all the other information you need. So you can really immerse yourself in your photography without having to take your eye off. Talking of the viewfinder, a nice inclusion of a diopter. So as a wearer of glasses, I appreciate that very much. And so looking through some of the obvious commands or dials that are on the camera, we have a little button here that we can illuminate our liquid crystal display. It also doubles up to, along with the button on the back here, the flash button will enable us, if we press those two buttons, it enables us to rewind our film back into our camera. So just coming back to the right hand side here, we've got our exposure compensation, which also includes flash compensation. So in fact that's flash compensation, that's exposure compensation, so two separate dials there. Seems needless, you could perhaps have just made one, but there you go, it's both are included there. When you have options, you generally choose either the back dial here or the front command dial. So looking to the left of the camera, we have all the obvious culprits: manual mode, aperture priority, shutter, program mode. And then if we go back, we have custom functions. Yes, you are seeing correct there. There are 18 functions that you can customize. And just looking through, some of them the obvious ones about bracketing order and focus area selection, but a couple of others that I found quite interesting. On-demand grid lines can be superimposed on the display, and then we can choose multiple exposures. Our film rewind. Film rewind is an interesting one. We can choose a high-speed film rewind or a quiet film rewind. So with all these custom functions, there's normally only one or two options, except for the very last. Yes, that's right. Yes, there are only actually two functions, except for one, time delay. We can choose from a series of different options there. But there's too many to go through. This video will be way too long if I went through all of them. But some really interesting ways that we can really customize our camera. So it really does help us to appreciate this is a very powerful piece of kit here we have. And then just turning the dial finally, we can choose our ISO of our film, even though DX coding is included in the camera. Open our film chamber with the dial, and we can see our DX coding there. We have another additional command dial that can rotate our focus points, and also, yes, that's right, we can do that. Sorry. Exposure lock and exposure focus lock can also be controlled with this dial. And again, this button and some of the other buttons can be customized with those 18 customized functions. So on the left hand side here we have our flash button, where we can go through a series of different red eye reduction. We've got our bracketing set, we can choose there. And then just going back to the dial, it also has some other functions, single or continuous release, a self-timer, and multiple exposure. That's pretty much it there. Just moving to the front, we have our lens release. Lenses, pretty much most lenses can be used, particularly autofocus lenses with an aperture ring. We get more limited functionality with some of the older lenses. We have to perhaps put it in manual mode. We may even lose metering if you use some of the really old, perhaps AI lenses. But it plugs into all of those rich lenses that you can use. Single and continuous release button here that we can choose for our focus. Okay. So I really have only touched the surface, I have to admit. There's so many functions on this camera, but it's well worth an investigation. And sorry, a little button there to release our flash, presumably. There we go. And although it's predominantly a plastic or carbonate body and quite light, it's quite solid body and very comfortable in the hand with the grip that really distinguishes it as a Nikon camera. So that's pretty much it. So that has been camera number 217 of 365.